Open source and supply chain management will be discussed in this video. More specifically, I will examine what they are and why they are important in today's internet-dependent society. Open source indicates a program that can be altered due to its design being openly available and modifiable. It first started with Linux around 1991, and the concept has continued to expand since then. Closed source software like Microsoft Office is different because their source codes are kept secure and only available to the company. Here are a few examples of closed source and open source software. Open source software has many advantages, such as having larger development support, being more secure against bugs, having extended community support, and being customizable. This is all due to the fact that the software's secure code is openly available. Furthermore, source code can be described as a list of instructions in computer text. For a program, computer programmers use the source code in order to manipulate how software, programs, or applications work. Moreover, programmers with this access can enhance whatever program by adding to it or correcting parts that do not function properly. Overall, this minimizes software bug issues. This process tends to keep open source software up to date and error-free. LibreOffice and GNU are examples of software that have open source codes. One benefit of open source is security. Open source allows anyone to examine software for security flaws. The continuous and broad peer review enabled by openly accessible source code improves security through the identification and elimination of defects that might otherwise be missed. Another benefit of open source is low cost. Apache OpenOffice is an example of open source and comes at no cost. It is very simple to go online and download the free file. On the other hand, Microsoft Office is closed source, and the 2016 home and student version is estimated to be around $165. However, it is important to note that not all open source software is free. Most of them are, but a few are only available for a low cost. The programs are very similar. Almost all of the functions available on Microsoft Office are available on OpenOffice. So why aren't people using OpenOffice? Because Microsoft Office has become mainstream. Microsoft is probably the only software introduced early on in most American classrooms. We grew up using Microsoft, so we are ingrained to use it. Students as well as schools could benefit if schools utilize or offer other software such as OpenOffice. Source code of open source software is accessible to all, meaning that no one company owns the software. Any company can build to open source software. It may be operated and maintained by multiple vendors, reducing both barriers to entry and exit. A customer can also easily access other vendors because they are not locked into one vendor's offering. Collaboration among programmers, another benefit that encourages the sharing of programming knowledge. The enhancements can be taken and applied to other software. This is one of the allowances open source software must offer, according to the Open Source Initiative. Overall, this process finds and shares solutions to some of the current software problems. Technologies. Because of open source technologies, systems such as Linux operating system and Apache web server application have helped build the internet to what it is today. James Whitehurst, president and CEO of Red Hat, said, "I think we're seeing the fundamental shift in where innovation happens, going from the labs of a few software companies to these massive open source efforts." Next, I will talk about supply chain management. Supply chain management customers values because companies strive to operate at or higher than competitive advantage. This means companies will offer something better than the competitors to consumers. For example, having lower costs or better quality products would be a competitive advantage. In order to do this, the business has to operate most efficiently so they can continue offering that competitive advantage. Supply chain management is the collaboration of suppliers trying to implement the most efficient and economical way to produce and distribute the product or service. Labor is one of the largest determinants of cost in the supply chain. Overseas workers are often willing to work for less than US workers, which is causing many companies to adjust their supply chain to include foreign manufacturers and information processors. Wages and hours worked are key indicators of supply chain costs. The product development stage is very important when it comes to considering costs. According to the study conducted by Andrea Cristina dos Santos and colleagues, the decisions and actions during this phase will account for nearly 80% of the final product cost. It is imperative to design and manufacture the product most efficiently so the final cost can be minimal. This benefits both producers and customers. Strategic sourcing is an approach to supply chain management that formalizes the way information is gathered and used so that an organization can leverage its consolidated purchasing power to find the best possible values in the marketplace. Strategic sourcing software modules can facilitate the approach by standardizing sourcing requirements and providing users with federated data technology with which to share information about products, markets, and business needs. Logistics is the management of the flow of goods from the point of production to the point of consumption. Across the globe. Logistic management manages the flow between a company and its suppliers and customers. The objective is to plan and coordinate all the activities necessary to achieve the desired level of delivered service and quality at the lowest possible cost. Supply chain. The physical flows involve the transformation, movement, and storage of goods and materials. They are the most visible piece of the supply chain. The model contains two sectors. At the far left is the household sector, containing people wanting to consume products. At the far right is the business sector, doing the production. Two sets of markets are also included. At the top are the product markets that exchange final goods and services. At the bottom are the source markets that exchange the services of the goods, the services of the scarce resources.